Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever in the world you are. My name is Larry Faigh, and I'm here to bring to you an opportunity to connect to your genius. And what I mean by connect to your genius is an opportunity to talk to individuals who have found their passion and their purpose through whatever career or organization that they've gotten involved in. So it's not just your genius, it's also my genius, because then I have an opportunity to learn some things on the way. And today is no different. I'm so grateful to have a wonderful guest I'll be introducing in just a moment. But before we get into the introduction, I want you, if you're watching this and you're interested in any aspect of your life that you have to influence others to do something, take action. If you sell a product or a service, you're going to want to get some pen, paper, right? Someplace to take some notes, whether that's your phone or your tablet, and get ready, because I think you're going to be in for a treat. You're going to have an opportunity to hear some tips, some knowledge, and also some opportunity to continue your learning and your development as a salesperson in your life, right? Really taking the lead in your sales life. Well, our special guest this afternoon here in Dallas, Texas, is my buddy, Larry Faigh. I had the fortune of meeting Larry, Larry, it would be what, a year? Oh, not a year, in December. I think we met in December, we decided.
Yeah, about 9 months ago, 9
months ago. Look at that, you've already changed my life.
I don't think so, but go ahead.
Well, I had the fortune of meeting and connecting with Larry at a business networking event. And it was just in a few minutes of conversation. And I remember, Larry, you handed me your business card and you said that you had some things coming up that would be helpful for me, a budding entrepreneur. I'd only been in business at that point for like 8 months or so, still needing to learn tons, and I still need to learn today. And when I attended a couple of your workshops, I learned so much, not just in the sales life, but also really thinking about how I connect and set up conversations with anyone, really. So I'd love to bring some of that into our conversation today. And the other thing I like about you so much is that you're so passionate about what you do, you have fun with it, and super generous with your information and how to make other people better at what they might be afraid to do, which is what you did for me. So thank you so much and welcome.
I enjoy being here, and I think your listeners, and you'll find out that you know already, I like to talk and I love to help people, and I'll share anything I can to try to make people better in my small realm of the world that I deal with.
Absolutely. You're going to become everyone's sales hero.
Well, I hope so.
Yay!
Maybe I can provide a few things that will make everybody's day just a little bit better and a little bit more proficient as it relates to sales and influencing.
Awesome. Exactly what we're aiming for. And the good news, everybody, is that not only is Larry a good man, but he's also the owner and president of a Dallas-based organization called Persuasive Communication. And that's a franchise of Sandler Training Systems. So we'll learn more about that and what that means in just a moment. But I think the main thing is that, Larry has extensive experience. It's been 30 years that you've been in sales development, and you have so much knowledge. I wonder, what are some of the most common questions that you've had to deal with in sales?
Well, a lot of it is common questions that come with mostly problems or issues people tend to have. That might be that I don't have confidence in how to ask a question or how to hit hard topics, or it may be I just don't know how to have a compelling conversation as it relates to prospecting. Or we have a lot of misconceived notions about what it is and what the sales process is, or even the influencing process. We expect too much too soon. So one of the things that we try to do in our training and in our development of influencing and selling is have people understand there's a little bit different goal in the world of, say, prospecting than there would be in the goal of, or in the world of the complete sales process that you have. So if you can understand a little bit that, well, let's break this up in little parts and let's get comfortable with those parts, then I think, and we understand what they mean, then it helps everybody. One of the top rules I'll tell everybody out there in the world of particularly sales is don't get emotionally involved in the sales process.
What?
it is not really a good time for you to get your emotional needs met. You are trying to influence and sell, and your prospect has a high desire for that to happen. But the more you get emotionally involved in that process, the more difficult it becomes for you to be objective about what you need to provide and the needs that you have and the things that you want to be able to solve or resolve for your client along the way. Selling isn't hard if you understand I'm not going to get everybody. And even if I do things perfect, I'm not going to get everybody to buy from me. So what we work on the sales side and the influence side is control what you have control of. That's your behaviors. That's what you say. That's your questioning skills and how you do it. But you can't make everybody say yes to you. And you have, in the less emotional involved you're in that, the more control you have over your own actions, the better off you'll be in the long run. So,
Wow, that I think it's helpful not to get emotionally involved. I'm curious though, first of all, what made you so interested in pursuing this as a career? Why sales of all the things that you could have done as a business person?
No, it's a good question. And I graduated from SMU, and when I got out of school, I really didn't have the funds to go to graduate school, but I also wanted to go to work. And one of the things I found out really early in my college career is that I had a desire to do two things, probably misguided, but I had a desire to do it. One was I wanted to be financially successful. I wanted to really compete or find a way to compete in the business world, but also make a good income. The other part of that was I wanted to put my fingerprints on something. I didn't want to be part of and it's just my personality. I didn't want to be part of a huge organization that I was just a number and you knew a few people and you didn't make great impact. And the easiest place for me to find that was a home in sales and sales management. So right out of college, I took the career path that said I want to be in the world of sales, and I want to make a difference in companies, and I want to be able to stand out and be recognized, and I want to be rewarded for that. So it wasn't misguided in going into it. Made a lot of mistakes along the way, misguided ways to do it. But my desire to go into that world was pretty well thought out, and it fit me very well. And I certainly don't fit behind a desk on a day in and day out basis. And I have discovered that in some roles that I've had in a management role or in a development role, that you go, boy, this is not me. I like the field and I like the people, and I like to help people with what I have to bring to them and hopefully solve problems for our clients and customers. So that's what drew me to it.
Well, you're right. I think your personality is really suited for interacting face to face with people and connecting with them. So I'm curious, first of all, you mentioned being the competitiveness, right? You wanted to really win. It sounds like that's important to you. Is it necessary?
I think it's fair to say, and the winning is not necessarily with the prospect or with the individual I'm selling to. Winning is am I achieving my goals, and am I getting where I want to be through this process? And so it's not about what most people interpret a seller being sort of that guy who's going to be real hard-nosed, he's going to be pushy, he's going to sell me something I don't need. That actually really doesn't happen a whole lot in the sales world. It's more about winning and getting me where I want to go. Where will this take me, both financially but professionally? Am I getting the things out of my career? Am I passionate about it? Do I like doing it? What makes me get up in the morning when nobody's watching me? And will I get out of my comfort zone without somebody pushing me? And all those things about the sales process do that. They make you stretch. They make you get uncomfortable. You fail a lot. And Lord, I have a career of failing. And we grow from every one of those. We learn a little bit about it. If we take the right attitude related to failure and stretching out of your comfort zone and learning to persevere and move forward. So that, yes, it's highly competitive, and that's what drives you. And any small business owner or entrepreneur or anybody who wants to get that next promotion or next step or even a larger paycheck fits into that world of being competitive. It's just they need to understand where it is more in the sense of what I want to get out of this, and what are the behaviors. We talk about that a lot. What are the activities or behaviors that I need to do that gets me there? Mm-hmm. And part of our process, hopium is not part of that. Hope won't get you there.
But I'm Hope.
Well, okay, and you're here to help us get there. But the reality of it is your behaviors and actions, and the correct behaviors and actions are what keeps us guided to get to those goals. And that's, everybody has that competitive component. Sometimes they just don't know where that is. Mm-hmm. And in my case, it wasn't real hard for me to find.
I love that. So I think what you're pointing to is that it's not about winning the sale necessarily. That kind of goes back to not getting emotionally attached, but it sounds like really committed to whatever the goal or your outcome is, whether it's in your personal, in your business, and in your own satisfaction of having accomplished something you set out to. So I really appreciate that, because I'm not a competitive person by nature, but I do feel good when I accomplish what I said I wanted to accomplish in any of my conversations or relationships.
No, and I think it's not to interrupt you, but it's one of the reasons that the Sandler methodology and the Sandler selling system and the processes of influencing are so important to me, and really made a big difference in my outlook and methodology of selling, because selling is not about making somebody buy something they don't want. And it's not about high pressure. It's about us finding solutions to people's needs, issues, difficulties, a term we use a lot called pain, or maybe that's their pleasure, the things that they want. People buy for their reasons. But sometimes we have to help them discover what those reasons are. And typically you're not going to buy products or spend money out of your pocket if you don't have a need for it. So it's us, good salespeople find people who have need and issues, and do I have products or services that actually will solve those issues, difficulties, or problems that you may be having. Mm-hmm. And in reality, where we don't like salespeople as a prospect, and I'm the same way, is I don't want to be high pressured into buying something when I look at it and go, I really don't need that. Or I really don't want that feature. And then it becomes my defensive gates come up, my walls go up, and I go, wait a minute, people love to buy, but they don't like to be sold. And now you're trying to sell me. And that's what's different about how we look at it, because it's more about solve issues, find problems, solve those things that people are having, and discover what they need. And if you have the answer, then great, let's have a conversation. But if you don't try to sell them.
Oh, well, I want to pinpoint what you said there about people like to buy, but they don't like to be sold to. That's really, really key. And there's something that you shared in, I believe, one of the workshops I went to, where you said there's 3 different levels of information that you can get from someone that lets you know how you might be able to help them. Can you go over that with us? I think that.
One of the great things about what we do is that it's a lot of our methodology is based on research and psychology, how buyers actually think, and we all do it. When you see it, you go, oh gosh, I do that too. But if we use the term pain, and let's just define pain as being a need, something I want to resolve, that type of thing. It could be pleasure. I mean, nobody buys a boat because they're in pain. So it could be that too, that's with it. We have fun with it. We do things that are there. But typically people have 3 areas of pain. And if you're trying to really discover as a influencer or a seller, and if you want to make impact with your prospect, we look at it and go, well, the first thing that we hear is what we call a pain indicator, and that's what's happening. And that's something that most prospects, if you will, or individuals will share with everybody. And that is the aspect, and I say this a lot in my workshops, is that you may be an HR director and you may actually share with everybody, we have a high turnover rate in the sales department, let's say. But that's just a surface problem. There's a second level to that, and most sellers don't, or influencers don't really go to that second level, and that is, okay, you have high turnover. Tell me why you have that high turnover. Help me understand why that's happening. And that makes that thought process of the person you talk to really articulate to you a little bit better of what these issues are. It may be that we don't have a real good onboarding program. We don't train our people very well. We don't nurture them enough. We don't give them the best education on the short term that they're here. And so we put them out there, and they tend to fail and get frustrated because it's a high pressure job or it just doesn't work out, and they leave. There's a third level to that that's very important if you're actually influencing somebody or selling, and that is, how does that impact you? So it's what's the impact that it has on the individual? And a lot of people will say, well, gosh, that's an HR guy, he has high turnover and he knows why it happens, but it's the sales department. It's really not his problem. But if I ask him, how does that impact you? He may tell me, how does it impact me? It impacts me quite a bit. I spend 20 hours a month extra because I have to offboard people and do exit interviews. I have to go through personal improvement plans for people. I have to then post job interviews and postings to get new interview people in to interview and talk with. And then I have to screen them and then bring those to the sales manager that's there. And what I do know is that that's a lot of time and money to the company. And if I didn't have to do that, I wouldn't be in on salary. That's what personal impact would be. So a lot of times in our world of selling and influencing, we tend to take that first level of what is happening and take that for granted. And the problem is we never get down to the world of what is the impact that it has on the individual that is dealing with this and that makes the decision. Sometimes that's a loss of money. Sometimes it's a loss of time. Sometimes it's high frustration. Sometimes it's just peace of mind. But keep in mind, if you're a seller or an influencer, I want to get more information so my prospect actually can give me good answers and understanding. And that is what's happening, why is it happening, and how does that impact you?
That's exactly what I do in coaching, actually. It sounds very similar because, yes, people usually show up presenting a challenge. Oh, I need to communicate better. Like, okay, so what is it about the communication that's a problem? So then they'll explain what that is. And then what's the impact? Well, my boss told me I might get fired if I don't improve. Whole different level of conversation.
It's very similar. And one of the things we talk about in the sales world that I'm sure you get a lot, because we see this in the workplace a lot, is judgmental phrases. And making sometimes we make high judgmental phrases or comments. And what comes out to us is just comment, but what our prospect or listener hears is something that's highly judgmental. And now that has a great effect on what we do. So what you say about communication would be is, well, how does that make me feel? Well, you've put me on unequal ground now because of that judgmental comment. And so again, we have three levels of the communication piece that we have to deal with.
Okay, let me make sure I understood this part. So you said that depending on the question that I ask, the quality of information that I get will be better. So instead of asking, how does that make you feel? What would be the most appropriate question that does not put them on the defense?
Well, it's just be careful of how you ask the question. How does that make you feel is okay if it's appropriate. But you could ask a question that would be more in the sense of the answer. I already know the answer, and it would be, we'll do it this way. Well, that can be very judgmental depending on the individual that's there. Don't tell me to do it this way. Maybe it would be better asked is, have you thought about looking at it in this perspective, or perhaps this would be better? And those are the kind of little things that we try to work as we work down that side of looking for what's happening, how is that, why is that happening, and how does that impact you? Is not trying to do that in a very harsh or judgmental fashion. Just if you want to think of it in a word, be nurturing as you ask those questions. Be nurturing instead of critical. We will tell you to do that all the time.
Be nurturing instead of critical. That's excellent. There's a couple more things I think would be really helpful for the listeners is you mentioned that there's a way to sell, there's a seller system and there's a buyer system. Can you explain what that means
Yeah.
and how it impacts us?
It's actually a really good question, and most people don't realize it. In a selling situation, and let's leave it as selling, but sometimes this is true in influencing. We call it a buyer-seller dance. There's always this and I'm going to call it a competitive nature. Somebody takes control of most conversations. So if you think about ballroom dancing, somebody leads and somebody follows. If you both follow, you don't do very much. And if you both lead, you stumble over each other. So in the world of dancing, somebody's willing to follow and somebody's willing to lead. It's not about winning each other. It's about performing the best we can. And so there's a willingness to you lead and I'll follow. In the world of sales, that's the same way. The only difference is we don't already have the ground rules set before we go in. And what's interesting is prospects have a buying system. And Valerie, you have one and I have one, and every listener has a buying process that they go through. And it's very common. So if you want to think about this, think about you're a prospect or you want to buy something. This isn't an impulse buy. This is somebody has to sell you something and convince you that you have to give me your credit card, or you have to write a check, or you have to, go get financed or whatever. So it's not quite as easy as, hey, I see that, I want it. But there's really 4 steps in the prospect's buying system. One is prospects tend to mislead or lie. They don't give real answers to the salesperson. And in fact, it's a high percentage of that information that they give to a salesperson is actually fabricated, maybe embellished or de-embellished, whatever the word may be. And there's a reason for that. We've spent decades being indoctrinated that if we tell a salesperson what our issues are, what my problems are, what my concerns are, what my budget is, all those things that are with it, we're going to get taken advantage of. So we're not really going to give a salesperson good information as a general rule if we have to make it, because we don't want to be taken advantage of. Okay. Second step in a prospect's buying process is that I want to gather information. I do want you to educate me. I want to know about your product. So please present to me. Tell me everything your product does. Tell me about your competition. Tell me about the warranties and the life cycle and the life span of the product that's there. I'd also like to have, in some instances, maybe a quote and proposal. If you'd put that in writing, I'd really like it. Why would I want that? Well, I really don't trust you enough that if I want to buy this, you're going to keep this price. But the real reason also is I might want to shop it. I might want to go to other people and do it. So I'm going to ask you to educate me a lot that's with it. And then typically, if we don't know or we haven't really understood this solves my problem, then we're really not going to commit to that sales rep. In fact, a lot of times we're going to say, let me think about it, or let me think it over. It's a really nice way, and not in a non-rude way, to disengage from a seller. We do it every day. Hey, let me think about it. The problem is, to a seller, he doesn't get a no and he doesn't get a yes, so he's not cut off. He has no clarity or definitive piece of where we go. So he's going to continue to follow up with you. And then what do we tend to do if it doesn't make a fit? Well, we disappear. So when he calls us, instead of us answering as a prospect, we just put him in voicemail and worry about it another day. And if you think about how we process all this buying piece, that's what prospects do all the time. I do it, you do it, and we kind of live in it. On the selling side, we have this system where we're going to ask questions. We bond and rapport with our prospects, and that's great. We want to build trust, and we want to connect with them. But we need to ask questions. Well, the problem is I'm asking them questions, but I'm getting misleading answers. So I'm not really getting, because of the way my system works as a seller, I'm not really getting good, honest, developed answers for what I'm trying to solve. The second or the third step in a seller system outside of bonding, rapport, and questioning is presentation. And this is where most sellers gain their credibility to you as a prospect. I'm gonna tell you my knowledge of the product, the market, the history, my company, everything with it. And this is my spotlight that I can actually articulate all the things that I do and my product does and where it goes. Well, that's interesting because the second step of a prospect system is gathering information. I am more than willing to have you educate me. Please do. And I'm going to do that. When we finish, I might even go to the internet and see if I can't find more. And that's a frustration, because what happens, I didn't get really good as a seller. I didn't get really good answers to my questions. And I've given you all this information. And my next step is I want to try to close, or we call it a trial close in a traditional system. And if I like what I heard, maybe I buy it. But more times than not, I don't. So I'm going to have some questions, what we call questions or objections or stalls. We answer those, and then we try to close again. Well, the problem with the presentation phase is I'm going to give you information and my prospect is willing to take it. You become a very, very expensive unpaid consultant. And that's kind of the problem in that world of prospects want to gather information, don't want to give you good information, and you're taught, well, let me tell you everything I know and how we do it. And it's because we've really not set up a system or a process that helps me as a seller understand what your needs are, and helps you as a buyer to go, listen, I don't think you're trying to coerce me. I just think you're trying to find some information that's there. So how do we do that? In Sandler, we change that process and how it's done. And we try to get our clients out of that world of free consulting. We try to get our clients out of the world of what we talk about of giving too much information without gathering information. And the critical piece of selling and influencing is understanding what your prospect or the person sitting across from you, what they need, what their issues are, what their concerns are. And if they're already defensive because you're a seller, you have to ask questions a different way. But if you know how they think and how they process information, now I have a little bit of chance to be able to have a better conversation with them and using a separate process that goes with them.
Ooh, that could be super helpful, because I even as you were explaining the buyer system, I have absolutely seen myself in that position, that I try to play my cards really close to the vest and I don't share too much, or if I do, I maybe don't, like you said, embellish, or perhaps just very, very small doses. And you're right, it does put me somewhat at the defensive, trying to figure out what the intentions of the other person, might be. What I find interesting is that there's a conversation that you also taught me that not only worked in my conversations with potential clients, but also in just setting up any conversation with someone. So from the get-go, it feels like the defenses are lowered. And that's when you talk about the upfront contract. Would you mind sharing that with us? I think that would be a great tip for the listeners to.
No, it's a lot of the things we teach in Sandler. Yes, they're sales driven, but a lot of those spill over into our personal lives and and really outside of our selling concepts, just in our business lives too. And one of those great little tools that we have is called an upfront contract. And really don't get tied up in the name of upfront contract. It's more about take the mutual mystification out of the encounter. That encounter could be a 1-hour sales conversation, or it could be a 15-minute phone call. But it's about establishing what is going to happen in this time frame that we're here. So if we're going to say it's a 1-hour sales conversation, then I want to articulate in that meeting 5 primary things. One is, what's the purpose of the meeting? What is my agenda, or what technically what's the prospect's agenda? That might be questions, by the way. It doesn't have to be a formal agenda. What's my agenda? How much time do we have? Are we on the same page with time? And then and then what's critically important at the end is what is the outcome? What do we want to get out of this, and what do we do next with it? And I want to set that out up front. I want to start that conversation. I don't care if it's a small phone call or a board meeting, or if it's a sales encounter that says, in not any great order, and it doesn't have to be very eloquent, that just says, what's the purpose of what we're doing? Well, if it's my meeting and I called it, I want to establish the purpose and why we're here. I'm going to have some questions that we have. I know you're going to have some questions after that, so I want to leave time to do it. That's with it. Is we talked about on the phone, is 60 minutes okay? Valerie, do we still have 60 minutes? Great, I'm glad we do. And listen, at the end of that 60 minutes, I'd really like us to have some clarity of what we do next. I don't think that will actually become a sale, at least in my experience it is. It might, but if you like what you hear and there's enough synergy, then usually that turns into a second meeting. And I'd like to set a date on that second meeting and a time frame that it's there, because typically after that, we do exchange enough information to know if you want to do business and move forward. Would that be okay? It might be something as simple as a phone call. Hey, Valerie, this is Larry. Do you have 15 minutes that I can talk to you? I have 3 questions. And if you tell me I've got 15 minutes, yes, I do. I now have bought myself 15 minutes with you to answer to ask the 3 questions and get answers with it. So it doesn't have to be really eloquent, but most people go into encounters or sales meetings and they just know there's a meeting. They have no idea what's going to happen, the expectation of it, or where it is. So upfront contracts really eliminate the mutual mystification. And the great part about it is the person who's doing the upfront contract now leads in that dance. It's now they have controlled the environment that says, here's what we're going to do and here's how we're going to do it. And they now have a more effective and efficient communication process in that encounter. It's used a lot in the world of bringing up very difficult topics. So let's say that I am a seller and I want to talk about a cost or budget. And I'm real concerned that maybe you're having cash flow problems and I want to talk about price and budget, but I don't really know how to bring it up. Well, in my upfront contract, I can say, listen, during a conversation, I'd really like to have a chance to discuss what your budget expectations are, if you've even set that, what they are with it. And I'd like to articulate some of our expectations and concerns that we would have with it. Is that okay? The minute they ask that, then you're okay. Pardon me. So upfront contracts are very, very powerful in establishing what's going to happen, and it makes the whole encounter and conversation very efficient, very effective.
You're absolutely right. You know what's interesting? I've learned some things too in the world of how men and how women communicate. One of the things that I've learned is that we women typically want to make some sort of connection as well. So maybe my conversation might start off like, hi, how are you? How's your day? Or there's a little bit of that soft open, if you will. What I found really effective, specifically in not only speaking with male clients or even colleagues, but is to start off by saying, hey, this is the purpose of our conversation. So like, what's the point of the conversation gets established first. I do this with my brothers, to be honest with you. I did an upfront contract with them. I actually say, hey, I'm just calling to connect. I haven't talked to you in a couple weeks. Do you have some time? And they'll let me know, yeah, I'm on my drive back to work or something like that. So they'll let me know how much time they have available. I'm like, good. Well, I thought we could talk about Thanksgiving and what's coming up, or talk about this weekend and this event. And so I usually, I model exactly what you explained in my family conversations too. So I find that super useful.
It spills over into all parts of our lives if you use it with our kids, with our spouses, with our friends, with things that are there. And what's interesting about it, Valerie, is the person you're talking to doesn't know that's what's happening.
They don't.
And it doesn't matter how good or how bad that is. They still don't connect that dot. It's just a conversation. But what I've done is I've added purpose and outcome to it. And I've taken that mystification out of, well, wait a minute, How long are you going to hold me on the phone? Why are you calling for a reason, or are you just calling to chat? I don't care which, I just would like to know. Same way in the selling environment. What's our purpose here today? Is it to discover? Oh, okay. It's just to discover. You're not going to be presenting to me. We're just going to have a conversation and ask questions. It just depends on where it is, but taking that element out of the mindset of people who are in the room, it can be more than one, now puts everybody on the same page with you, because this is about being understood, not just heard. So if people know where you stand and what you want and what you expect and what their role is to play, now you become much better understood in that whole process.
Absolutely. Wow, Larry, you've given some really wonderful tips. We talked about the 3 areas of pain that you mentioned are really important. You mentioned the buyer system, the seller system, and then how Sandler just kind of flips that or creates the kind of strategies that help people overcome some of the systems that are naturally in place. And then you also mentioned the upfront contract. What else could we expect, or my listeners can expect, if they sign up for a Sandler course with you or with another Sandler rep in the country?
Well, I think what people really, if you look at Sandler training a lot, and I'll kind of put this in 2 segments, if you will. One is that if you are a business owner, if you're a seller or an influencer, we have processes and systems in our everyday lives all the time. It's not just in construction and things like that. Most likely every morning we get up, we get dressed the same way. Why? The same process, the same pieces. Why? Because that's the most effective and efficient way we do it. So if you think about what you do in your life and how you organize your closet and all types of things, it's because we have processes and systems to be efficient. What's interesting is we have those at work. We have accounting processes, we have IT processes, we have all these ways we order, we do things. But when it comes to oftentimes the most important part of our job or our livelihood, selling, influencing, or running a business, when it comes to the point of us selling, we tend to sell by feel. We don't use a system. And one of the things research shows is that if I have a selling system, an influencing and selling system, I actually will do better than just selling by feel alone. And there's a lot of good research and reasons why that happens. And part of that is you have a really good way to improve where it is and where it goes. So that's one side. The other side is that if you come into Sandler and you look at what we are, we're really not as much a selling system as we are a communication system. We work very hard on how you build trust, how you communicate with individuals, how you're understood rather than just heard, working very diligently on how to question people, how to understand what their needs are and where they go and what they do. And in fact, one of our assets as a methodology is that if you're just talking about selling and influencing, we will teach our people, qualify your prospects hard. If you qualify them hard, closing really becomes pretty easy. Closing is about mutual decision. It isn't about forcing somebody to buy. But we can't come to that mutual decision unless I can really determine, do you have the right kind of issues, problems, or as we talked about earlier, pains that my product or services can solve? And what I also need to know is who is in the decision, who makes the decision, how are they made, what is the process that's done, because I need to talk to decision makers. And then do we have the budget, or do we have the budgets and the dollars in the process that can do this, and am I willing to do that? And if we've gotten that far down the line and we've not disqualified them or they've not disqualified us, then you can now present to that prospect how you can fix their problem or concern. Keeps you out of being an unpaid consultant. And what that really kind of comes down to, Valerie, is we teach it is that you're going to be qualifying hard with individuals. And it's more questioning where we go. So it's one of the reasons we talk a lot, particularly in the corporate environment. This is not about forcing people to buy. This is about communicating with people properly, qualifying them properly, being ethical on how you do it, And truly the process comes down to mutual decision, in that your prospects typically understand, I need this, I want this. What do we have to do to make it happen? And it's the most pragmatic and efficient sales system I've ever worked under. And it's why I love doing it. And I sell it every day, but I also happen to teach it too.
That's awesome. You use what you actually practice what you preach.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, the one thing that I can bring to the table to every client I have is that I understand your fears. I understand your concerns. I know you have really good days, and I know you have really bad days, and I know what that try to be detached from this emotionally. I know all those aspects that are there, because I just don't train. I prospect and I sell. So as we say in our own Sandler network, we eat our own dog food. And that's comforting to a lot of our clients, because I can connect with the same issues and concerns that they have, because we do it on a daily basis too. And it's just part of what I like. And listen, it's one of the things I tell people all the time. There's so much information to be highly skilled at it. It comes in it's like going to college or school. You learn it in incremental pieces and you become good at it. But one or two little things, if you just put them in your daily activities, makes you a little bit better and efficient. But I will tell everybody, find a process, find a system. You will become far more, doesn't have to be mine, but you will become far more efficient and effective. And if you will stay with it and you believe in it, your success rate will go up. Your frustrations will go down, and we're all in this hopefully to make a little money, take us where we want to go professionally and financially. And having that process really does give you those steps and those ways, the little things that get you there, amongst the big picture of things that we got to deal with on a daily basis.
Absolutely. So a couple of things. Larry, who do you work with? Like, what kind of clients come to your sessions, and where and how could they connect with you?
Yeah. I work with anybody who's actually what's kind of interesting, I work with all types of people. And I say that some people who are truly professional sellers, but I have content and I have a large group of people who are really what we call non-professional sellers. They may be engineers, IT, small business owners, people who really don't spend their day as a full-time seller, but it's critically important for them to find clients and customers and build, or what we call business development, build a client base. And there's still hard selling skills learned in that content. It's just done differently in what we do. And then we obviously work with sales teams that are truly sellers that are out there. So I'll work from the individual all the way to a corporation or a company that's in the selling aspect that's there. I have a training center that's here in Dallas-Fort Worth. I actually do this in 2 different ways, or 3 different ways if you want. One is a workshop. I do workshops that are there. I typically do those in 2 to 4 hour windows. And we try to stay on fewer topics so people get skilled in those instead of trying to do a lot of information in one. So one of those topics might just be prospecting rather than a wholesale system. But I do private training too, and that would be more in a company that would have multiple reps. They want me to come into their environment because they're together, they do it. But I also do public training. And public training is the most fun training that I do, and I like it. It's where we bring individuals in from different disciplines. They're in my training center. It might be a group of 3 or 4 up to 12 or 13. If we get bigger than that, we usually start a second class. We customize, and we really drill down on all these types of selling issues and topics that are there. And it's beyond just technique. We talk a lot about behavior and the skills and how you self-manage and what's needed for you to be successful in that process. We keep our training classes small so we can make sure everybody has a say and they get it. Not everybody learns at the same rate, and we like to customize it into their business and what they do from that side. You can catch me in several different ways. Easiest is my email, which is larry.faigh@sandler.com. I'm more than happy to call me at 214-808-8482. That's directly. I do have a website, persuasivecommunication.sandler.com. Any of those avenues, we can talk. And honestly, it isn't about, with any of your listeners out there, it isn't about selling you. I'll have a conversation with you and just talk about some tips and things you want to do. I enjoy helping people along the way. If they decide they want to look at something or go deeper, hey, great, I'd love to have you. But if they have a question or they just want to learn a little bit about what it is or what it looks like, I'm more than happy to do that as well on the way.
This is really, really great information, Larry. And I've benefited from it myself, not only what you shared today, but in the sessions that I've attended that you teach. Super knowledgeable. You bring it down to earth. And I like that you actually have us practice a lot of the things that you sell. It's not just concept and writing notes. You really have us try out what we're writing or what we're learning about. And you have tons of examples that are really down to earth or really grounded in your experience and the experience of other customers. So it's very relatable information. So I can't say enough about how important that's been to me. It's been really helpful in my own journey as an entrepreneur. And I encourage anyone that's interested in connecting with Larry, I'll make sure that I'll put on the notes with this video how they can get a hold of you, Larry. So that way, I hope that your phone blows up. That sounds terrible. That you really do get the interest from people looking at bringing this into their organization, or perhaps even connecting with you one-on-one for their own small business. So
more than happy to have those conversations and talk to people who do it, because I truly am a product of the product, and I love sharing the information. I'm not threatened by it. I'll talk to anybody that's with it. You
really will. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Larry, for joining us. Everyone will have opportunities throughout. This is just an opportunity for me to highlight to you someone that I've worked with, someone that has a product or service that I think would be relevant in your life. And more importantly, somebody that really has a passion for what they do, and they see the purpose and how they're contributing that purpose, that passion, and that skill to others to make us even more proficient and more effective in the work that we are here to do. All right, so thank you everyone for joining in today. Have a wonderful rest of the day.